And today's session will be on the marketing and branding for nonprofits. So this is one of the sessions that we had done earlier this year. I think during January we did a round of this session, and then we had a lot of responses from nonprofits, lot of questions from nonprofits, and we thought it's important to go a little bit more deeper into this session. And hence today we have with us organization which has expertise in this area and has been doing marketing and branding for nonprofits. So today's session, Ashwin, if you can go to the next slide. Yeah, thank you. So today's session will be anchored by Forest Street Consulting. So Forest Street Consulting is a marketing and communications agency, and a agency with a strong marketing and communication ground, and who at the same time understands the social sector and development sector very well, right? So they are a group of passionate marketeers. They believe in a social cause and trying to leverage marketing and communication effectively for some of these issues. They have various kinds of services. So branding, and the services can be looked as brand discovery, campaign strategy, digital fundraising, social media management, website creation, CRM and email promotions, data analytics, and capacity building of nonprofits towards marketing and branding. And today, from the team, we have Moni, who will be anchoring this session. So, welcome Moni to the session. She's a lead communications in Forest Street Consulting. So, she has been with Social Alpha before she joined Forest Street Consulting, and has over 2 decades of marketing experience and a deep interest towards the social sector. So we are super glad to have Forest Street Consulting today, and really looking forward to this amazing session. Before I pass it on to Moni, as usual, kind of want to put out few housekeeping rules as the team kind of takes you through the content. Whatever questions you have, request all of you to kindly put that on the chat. What we will do is we will consolidate these questions, and we will have dedicated time for Q&A where we'll take these questions up. But please feel free to put your questions in, right? And we would want to make it as engaging as possible, and we'll try and address as many questions as possible. So we have allocated the last half an hour completely for questions. If you can put your videos on, that'll be great. It'll be good to see some faces there, and I'm sure the team will appreciate that too. So I think that's from our end. Passing it on to Moni and others to take this session forward.
Sorry, Moni, we can't hear you. You're on mute.
Yeah, can you all hear me now?
Yes, we
Yeah,
can.
sorry, sorry. Yeah. So I was saying, I really wanted to thank Meenu and Ashwini for organizing this session, and we're really, really excited to be part of this journey with you. We've gone through all the questions that you all had put in your application forms, and um, we will try to answer some of them. Uh, this is not going to be a session where you will go back saying, okay, I've cracked my marketing strategy, but you will go back saying, I know how to crack my marketing and communication strategy, right? So just to take a step back, the person that all of us are trying to fathom is this target audience, right? So why is it that we felt that we need to do something like this? Some of the questions that we heard from uh, various nonprofit social enterprises is we have more to talk about, but we don't know how and where. And there are so many channels, which one should we focus on? We need to work on a communication strategy, but we don't know where to start. Should we do social media? Should we do email? Should we do PR? What are the tactics which will actually help us create impact? So therefore, what we did was develop a kit called the Comms Compass, which will help everyone who's trying to put themselves out there in the market, trying to create a connection, trying to create an impact in the lives of people, and how to go about it through building a marketing plan. This more or less, Minu has already introduced about some of the clients that we've worked with in the recent past and who have seen a lot of impact is IDEAR, Rain Matter, Sarthi. Yeah, some of the impacts have been almost 15x increase in conversion. Google Ads does some amount of grants based on performance. So, 3x grants from Google and so on and so forth. And this is our team. There's Anuja, there's Simran, and there's myself. And we are the ones who will take you through this small journey. So the outline of today's webinar is going to be about how do you get started? Let's talk about how to review the sector landscape, build brand archetypes, and emphasizing what is the target audience that you need to, and therefore what are the narratives that you're going to be talking to them. And then finally find a connection saying, I have the foundation, now what do I do with it? How do I connect the dots? Some of the questions that we want to answer are what, how, what am I going to say? How am I going to say? Who am I speaking to? Where am I going to say this? When will I say it? And why am I saying this? Now, to put a little construct on this, there is something which is internal and something which is external, and at the heart of which is the organization goals. The internal part of the story is the key brand attributes. Why is it important to articulate a key brand attributes, adjectives that accurately describe your brand? This is actually going to define what you say. Now, how you say it is going to be the narrative. What is the connection that you're going to form with your target audience? How are you going to make yourself relevant in their lives? To do all of this, we need to take a step back and look at the external world as well. We need to look at the sector. We need to look at the different audience segments, and this will define who we are talking to, where we are talking to, when, and why. So let's start with the largest sector, which is the outside world. And the fact that all of us need to be relevant in my sector. And what is the gap that I'm fulfilling or fulfilling better? Right? The most easiest way, and something which all of us can do, is let's look at the landscape and look at other players. Basic Google search of who is saying what, how are they projecting themselves, what is it that they're saying. This is like a third-party research of what is happening in the sector. Now, the gaps that you could be fulfilling could both be latent or could be blatant. But how do you go about finding what are these gaps? Now, these gaps, which will finally help at arriving at your positioning, are of different varieties. You could be fulfilling a customer service or customer experience gap. And the most relevant example that springs to my mind is that of what Savlon did with Dettol, where every time you had a cut or a scrape and didn't want to clean it with a Dettol, but Savlon came and said, I will do it the same work, but I will do it better and no pain, right? So that talks about how you fulfill a gap in the customer experience. All the current delivery apps are all convenience-based. Then there are all the shopping options, which are all price-based, and some quality-based, which are depending upon what is it that they're promising you. So what all of these can help you arrive at is some kind of a differentiation strategy, which will also help you arrive at a media positioning strategy and also other positioning strategies. So let's look at some relevant case studies that could be of interest in the social sector. Let's start with Mekshala. Mekshala is an app aimed at teachers, because the key insight here is that the education that is imparted to students is person dependent. It depends on the ability of the teacher, the uh, infrastructure that the teacher has access to, and therefore, how is it that a lesson is best translated into an educational platform for a child. So what Mekshala did was it took the syllabus of a particular state, converted it into guided lessons, and it's available as on an app as a lesson plan for all teachers who download it. What this does immediately is that it ensures that the experience that the child has, irrespective of whether they're going to a school in an urban area, in a primary school, whether they're going to a school which really may not have that many number of teachers, so therefore the teachers are stretched and therefore not being able to devote that kind of a time to making lesson plans. So this gives you a kind of uniform experience to all students, so that what they take out from the education is the same, right? What this also does, that it monitors teachers' usage, so you can also know that which teacher is performing and who needs more help. Now, this is a clear positioning on the customer experience of both the teacher as also the child, right? The next case study that we're looking at is of voxel grids, which is a lightweight, ultra-fast, next-generation MRI machine. Now, the biggest issue with most MRI machines are they are huge, they are heavy, and they're very expensive. As a result of which, a lot of hospitals don't have access to them, and therefore, when patients are prescribed to do an MRI scan, they actually have to travel to the nearest larger town, or even in large towns, you have to find a hospital or a clinic which actually has an MRI machine, because everybody can't afford to or does not have one. Now, what is the biggest advantage that the Voxelgrid MRI machine is giving you? The fact that it's lightweight. And the minute you say lightweight, what it does for you is that it makes something which can be transported. So you can literally put it on a van, draw up a beat path, and say on the first of every month, this MRI machine is going to be available at a particular primary health center in some town or some village, right? So a patient who needs this can actually check and see which is the closest center where this MRI machine is next going to be available, and therefore does not need to travel all the way to a large town. So what this is fulfilling is of a convenience, the convenience of having an MRI machine at your doorstep. The next one that we're going to talk about is Incredible Devices. And Incredible Devices is the world's first company which talks about reprocessing systems. They started with reprocessing catheters because that was one of the most expensive items that is used for kidney patients when it comes to dialysis and things like that. And what it did was not only reduce the time it takes to clean the system, but also reduce cost by 70%, therefore bringing down the overall cost of what a dialysis patient needs to pay. So clearly, sorry. So clearly what gap Incredible Devices is fulfilling is price-based. The last example that we're going to talk about is Pool, which is Flower Cycle Incense. It's a company based out of Kanpur and is in the business of collecting all the waste flowers that are passed out by temples into the Ganges and converting them into incense sticks. Now, what it actually does is actually builds a circular economy, because it is not only looking at cleaning the environment, it is actually also going back and looking at the manual scavengers, which is a big issue in India as well, trying to give them a more humane, a more a better source of livelihood, because this is one thing that they can actually work towards, right? And what it actually comes out at the end of the day is an incense stick, which can be purchased by normal consumers. So very clearly what pool is based on is quality based, right? So we've looked at what a sector landscape could possibly look at. We've looked at the various kind of gaps that one could be fulfilling, and therefore arriving at what is the gap that I as an organization I'm going to fulfill, or what is the need gap of my end consumer, the person who's going to actually be adopting my service. What is it that I'm going to be fulfilling for them? Now let's look at actually the audience segments that we're looking at. Typically, there are 4 types of market segmentation at a very broad level that you can talk about. Of course, these can be broken up into finer and finer nuances depending upon how specialized the product or service that you're offering. Geographic, which is country, climate, population. Typically, this could be, for example, if you're talking about some form of thermal housing material, you would be looking at a colder climate environment where this would be required. Whereas for a warmer climate target audience, you would possibly be looking at maybe ways of ventilation if you're talking about housing. Similarly, if you look at demographically, it could be gender, it could be age, lifestyle, income, education. If I go back to the example of Meghshala, we're talking about uh, a teacher in the age group of say 25 to 40, who's at least a graduate, and therefore target people on the basis of that. The third way of segmenting target audiences and who you're talking to could be psychographic. What is the kind of lifestyle that they live? What are the values that they have? What are the opinions that they have? Now, this would be, for example, if you take pool, if someone is environment conscious, can I market something like an upcycled flower cycled incense sticks to them because people feel that they can do something for the environment by buying products like that? Similarly, the last way of segmenting the target audience could be behavioral. Now, this behavioral will depend on what is the benefit that one is looking at, what is the purchase cycle that they're looking at, how will they look at actually adopting, what stage are they in, what benefit are they looking at from getting this. Now, let's look at the incredible device and see how is it that each of these target segments could all be relevant for the same organization. So if you look at doctors and nurses, what are the aches and pains and that the doctors and nurses have? They have a lot of patients that they need to do it, but they also have to do it in a hygienic manner. They also need to do it in a manner that is not going to affect their health in any manner. So therefore, the factors that a doctor or a nurse which will look at the disinfection system would be very different from, say, example, the hospital board. So for a hospital board, one, of course, would be the fact what how technically correct it is, but it would also be cost would be a big important factor for them. Similarly for patients, or if you look at the government or technical authorities who will underwrite and give approval for a device like this. So even for the same product, when you look at the different target audiences that you have, each of the target audiences could have different pain points, will have different perspectives of what is it that they want, what age group they are in. They could be spread geographically. You know, your government or technical authorities, say, for example, could be based out of Delhi, which is where you need, but your patients could be in a smaller town. The hospital board, again, could be in a large district headquarters. But your doctors and nurses would again be at the location where the hospital is actually situated. So whether you're looking at it from a geographical perspective, or demographic perspective, or psychographic perspective, or even from a behavioral perspective, for the same product, you will have different target audiences who could fit across all 4 segments, right? So let's walk through a segment persona, and let's see how is it that you would go about targeting somebody like this. Now, for most of the organizations in the social sector, one key person that we all need to talk to at some point or the other is the CSR head. Now, if you try to map what a CSR head is from a demographic perspective, typically aged about 40 years, has a higher level of education of at least being a graduate and so on and so forth, works in an organization which is large, Then let's look at some of the psychographic and some of the behavioral attributes. So the preferred method of communication is email. They prefer to speak face to face. And the tools that they need to do the job is employees and the scheduling software or cloud-based storage and file sharing applications. And the job responsibility is actually finding the right NGOs and the timely disbursal of funds. Now, their job is measured by compliance, impact, and scale of program and aligned to company vision. Now, how would you go about sharing your information or targeting somebody with this kind of a demographic, geographic, psychographic uh, target audience, right? Now, the social networks that this person could be exposed to would definitely be all of them, right? That we know them, know as, they could be on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, and so on and so forth. But if you actually look at where is it that they're going to consume what kind of information, uh, that will drive your channel strategy, right? So Facebook and Instagram would possibly be more for leisure activities or for social, which is, families and friends and your interests, kind of your personal interests, so to speak. But it could be LinkedIn is where they're actually going to consume information or get knowledge or form alliances and partnerships about anything which is work related. So then the target audience that you're talking to, which is the CRS, the most relevant channel for you becomes that of LinkedIn. You could be using the other media channels that are available for other things. You could be trying to go about some kind of a behavioral change, which has to be done over a longer period of time. So therefore, you could be, feeding in little nuggets and little informations, which over a period of time changes the attitudes and, reactions of people to certain stimuli. But if you want immediate reaction and you want to establish a contact, you want them to, do something for you, or you want to do something for them, and therefore the immediacy is your task, maybe LinkedIn would possibly be the right channel for you at that point in time. Now let's look at another extreme. Okay, let's look at an ASHA worker. Typically, ASHA worker, let's look at their age group. Again, they could be between 25 to about 44 age group, but let's look at a smaller, slightly older, more experienced person. They would have at least some form of education, which is, since they have to be class 10 and above, so they may or may not be graduates, but definitely some amount of, at least in the plus 2 or graduation, some education they would have. Again, they could be having access to multiple social networks, right? But the preferred method of communication when it comes to work is phone, text messaging, or face-to-face. And the tools that they need to do the job is actually personal touch, because they actually have to go out into their work area, which could be their little town or the village that they're operating out of, and meet people, meet women, meet children, and ensure that the health and the matrices that they are responsible for are met, right? So how would you go about targeting somebody like this who definitely uses social media, would be on Facebook, but again, because the nature of the channel is such that they're not really looking at maybe Facebook as a means to consume information, right? It could be that there could be some Facebook groups that they're part of, which could actually help them to do their work. But the most effective method of communicating with somebody who's working out on the field and is a frontline health worker could possibly be WhatsApp. Because WhatsApp as a media channel, again, gives you the option of sharing whether you want videos or text messages or any kind of forwards that you want to do. WhatsApp also has that option. So as you see, depending upon who your target audience is, while you have access to multiple social media channels, sometimes you have to limit yourself and decide on which media channel you will use, depending upon the nature of the channel. Also, it depends on what is it that you're trying to achieve, and therefore which channel, what is the nature of that particular channel, and therefore how would you customize and marry three things: who you're talking to, where you're talking to, and what you're talking to them. So now we've taken a look at the external worlds, and we've done kind of a sector landscape, and we've done some kind of an audience segmentation where we know that the audience lives in a different world and what are their own worries and joys and pain points and things like that. Now let's take a step back and let's look at us internally. And let's introspect and look at us as brands. Now, it is important that you articulate who you are and what is it that you're going to say and what is it that you're not going to say. Now, to define and arrive at this, let's decide on what kind of a personality would an organization be. Now, typically there are 12 brand archetypes which were defined by Jung in 1935. We'll share the link for this with you, where you can actually go and define for yourself what other brand archetype that fits the organization that you are representing fits well. But let's look at some of the brand archetypes that exist and work well in the social sector. So typically there are 12 brand archetypes, and there is a thing where art has been used to describe each form of brand. There is also a brand personality quiz which is available, which has a list of questions which you have to rank in order of importance to you as a company, as an organization, and that will actually help you arrive at what kind of a brand archetype that you respond. The most common archetype in social sector is that of the caregiver, and would fit many organizations given the nature of the work that is done. And the core desire of the caregiver is to protect people from harm and to help others. Now let's look at some of the examples of who could possibly fit into this caregiver mold of a brand. Mother Teresa, in the social sector, there's UNICEF, there's WWF. In the commercial world, there is Johnson & Johnson, which talks about taking care of children. The next one that we could talk about is that of a hero who wants to improve the world and save the world, right? Some of them that come to mind is that of Nelson Mandela or the Red Cross. And of course, Marvel is the world of heroes, as also Nike, which wants you to bring out the hero within you. The third type of organization that you could be is that of the sage. Now, the sage is about the discovery of truth and about wanting people to know more and use your intelligence to improve the world. Other than Yoda, two such organizations which come to mind are TED and the Mayo Clinic. The last example that we will talk about is that of the magician who wants to make dreams come true. Walt Disney, and of course, for a lot of organizations in the social sector, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and other such large foundations. So the Compass kit that we were talking about, all of that, this exercise, and if you answer this kind of a grid, will actually help you arrive at what does your organization stand for. Now, each of these segments that we talk about, the Compass actually has a segment which, through some amount of internal working and working along with specialists in the field, you could arrive at the answers, right? Now let's look at the last bit, which is the power of narratives. Now this is very critical because this has to decide how the human psychology works and why storytelling is at the heart of any communication plan. Now I know this is something which has been dealt in detail in some of the other sessions that you have attended, so we will not really dive deep into this, but just touch upon it because this is a critical and the necessary fourth quadrant for you to arrive at some kind of a marketing or communication plan. Let's look at some visuals. This is a poster for East India. This is Gandhiji on one of his marches. This is a victory scene of IPL, right? So when you see each of these images, there is a different emotion, there is a different story, there is a different backstory that comes to your mind, right? Each one of us has different memories that are associated with each of them, good, bad, not so good. feeling of euphoria and things like that. So from each of these, one would arrive at what is it that you want to convey. So now let's look at how we can translate this into something which the social sector or any organization could talk about, right? So in each of this, if you actually look at it, there is a protagonist. There is a Mr. India, there is Gandhiji, and in the last one, it could either be cricket or it could be the IPL trophy or whatever. So you need to have one person as your brand persona who will be talking to your relevant target audience. So let's look at the first one, which is climate trends. And who is the protagonist that climate trends is talking to or talking about? It's citizens. And the context that they're talking about is that of a climate crisis. The message that is being put out is awareness. So the task that each one of them is doing is very different. And what is expected from the target audience is also, again, very, very different. So while climate trends is only going to talk about awareness, Give India has a very different role to play. The people that, or the persona that Give India is talking to is Indian nonprofits and the retail donors. And the context in which it is talking to them, that it is very difficult to connect the Indian nonprofits and retail donors. I want to do better. I want to donate. I want to support a child. I want to help the environment, but I don't know how to go about it, right? I don't know which organization is valid, which one is non-valid. That is a huge issue that some people do face in the nonprofit sector as well. So how do I go about actually supporting charity which I feel needs me, and therefore I can make a difference in somebody's life? So what Give India did was talk about a one-stop shop for India-centric charity. You feel that you want to do something for somebody else, you are in the philanthropic mode psychographically as an individual. We will give you a platform in which you can find the right kind of a nonprofit, find a cause that you empathize with, and within that cause, find a project that you feel that you want to help, right? So that was something that is done on a platform basis and at a more global, slightly larger uh, access that is being given by a platform to individual donors. Now let's look at the last example that we have here, which is Child Rights and You, which is CRY, where the protagonist is that of a child. And the context over here is issues with education, health, protection, and participation. Now, there are various organizations which deal with various aspects of all of this, right? So you have Akshay Patra, which is talking about giving the child a midday meal. You have other organizations which talk about just child rights or talk about health of children. But this CRY in India over here is actually talking about the message of giving a happy childhood. Now, if you want to give happy childhood, happiness cannot be gained by only one. Like if I educate a child, will make the child happy, it would make him happier, but I don't know whether she will be just happy with just education. So therefore, the child needs protection as far as other aspects are concerned as well, right? So you have health. Now, how do I give access to children who have health issues? Or how do I protect them from being preyed on, from whether we're talking about child labor or any other form of exploitation? And more importantly, do I give the child a voice and an agency to be seen, to be heard, right? So therefore, CRY is a platform that talks about happy childhood and is talking about, let's give them a holistic approach. How do you go about targeting different segments of a child and therefore give them a happy childhood? So let's ensure happy childhoods or for India's children. And therefore, as an individual, all you want to do is you want to participate and you say, yes, I want to help. And therefore, then you can choose about whether you're going about education, health and nutrition, so on and so forth. So this becomes then a very important narrative that Cry is talking about, right? And one truth that comes across in all communication strategies is there are two things which connect immediately with the target audience: children and pets, right? So which is why you will see a lot of uh, non sector brands also who will try to project, either use these as protagonists because they feel that that helps them form an instant connection with the target audience. So now we've done the sector landscape, we've seen what others are doing, we've seen what gaps there are, and therefore what we can do as an organization. We've looked at different kinds of segments. We've checked where do they live, what do they do, what do they consume, what are the media channels that one can use to target them, and what is the story that I can tell them that will actually interest them, right? And this all has to be said from a brand attributes perspective, because certain brands will behave in a certain manner, they will speak in a certain manner, they will say certain things, right? If you are a brand who is about a stage where you're empowering people and you're in the teacher mode, the way that you speak to your target audience is going to be very different from that of a magician who's there to say, I'm going to make things happen for you, right? So the way that you speak, the words that you use, the channels that you're, all of this will actually be defined by some of the key brand attributes that you arrive at. Right? And then, of course, there is the importance of the narrative. What story are you telling? How are you connecting with them? What aspect of the target audience's life do you feel that you could be a part of? Or what aspect of the organization do you think that the target audience segment could be a part of? So now let's look at how do I connect the dots? I know who I'm talking to, what I'm saying to them, how I'm saying to them, who are the others in the sector that I'm talking to, but how do I go about building a communication plan for them? For this, I want to hand you over to Simran. Simran is our in-house specialist uh, who works on actually building a communication marketing plan for you and will actually help you execute this. So I will just hand this over to Simran.
Thanks, Moni. Hello, everyone. My name is Simran, and I work with Forest Street Consulting as a PPC, a paid marketing specialist. I have experience working with numerous startups and SMEs in the FMCG and development sector on demand generation. I'm a data driven marketer by training and by passion. So, before I deviate you too much from today's topic, let's dive back in. Moni, if you could help us with the link to the toolkit on the chat window. There's a form that you all can fill out and download this free toolkit. Um, I will give you all a few minutes to do so, and then we can start off. I hope everyone has downloaded the toolkit. I'll start off and walk you through the toolkit now. So, as an organization, you understand how critical it is to get the word out there. However, it could be challenging to know where to begin. That's why there are so many digital tools and social media channels available out there, but it becomes overwhelming to find a clear strategy. That's why we have built this toolkit called Comms Compass for organization leaders like you. This will help you build a solid comms foundation and a strategy that will help you get a clarity on key attributes that will help your organization set apart. Since Moni did a good job of introducing a brand, I won't get into it. Uh, I'll start off with introducing the toolkit on the sections that we have on the toolkit for you. To help you navigate through the world of digital communication, we have organized the tools and resources in the following section based on the desired outcome for a social purpose organization. The toolkit is specially designed for nonprofits and social enterprises, and it has 5 sections of building a sound digital communication plan, starting from telling a brand story, setting a strong foundation, understanding how to reach new potential customers, building a successful fundraising campaign, engaging with stakeholders and increasing repeat donations. Lastly, building advocacy who will support your campaign and amplify your message. We have covered only the first part of the toolkit, which is building up a strong brand foundation to tell your brand story in this first part of the toolkit. And Moni has already walked you through the foundation part of this toolkit, but to make it more actionable for your organization, you need to fill out these exercises given below in each of these sections. I don't expect you to do this right away, as this requires time and brainstorming with your team. These exercises will help you with different areas of building a foundation, which is in terms of defining who you are, or what is your organization goals, or what does your organization stands for, what your organization sector landscape is, putting lens to the sector landscape, doing a comparison with your alternatives, then understanding who your target audience is, and knowing what their pain points are, and then lastly identifying where to put your marketing efforts, and eventually building a more tactical marketing plan for your organization. Since this is the biggest gap that we see today, that people are ready to go all out on marketing before even knowing where to begin, and thus it's important to know that where is your marketing biggest gap is, and where you need to put efforts on. Thus, therefore, we have designed this buyer persona cycle, which is also called as adoption cycle. Uh, it is important to know the crucial component that will allow you to strengthen your marketing funnel. uh, you would want to know that which part of the funnel piece is missing, and that's when you want to put your marketing efforts on. Is it the awareness that not enough people are aware of what you do, or is it the lack of significant donor database, or maybe is it that you have difficulties in getting repeat donations, or the lack of champions to spread the word out there about your campaigns or your brand? The adoption cycle has been mapped to a variety of channels that you can see here in terms of social channels, CRM, uh, emails, and once you are strong with all parts of the uh, adoption cycle, then you can build a 360-degree campaign. But if you are not strong enough at any of these, then it's not compulsory to go after all the channels at one go, but to stop and pause and think that which stage of the funnel would require which part of the channel's support. And thus, we have mapped the relevant channels to each stage of the adoption cycle, so that it's helpful to only pinpoint on the channels that are needful. Therefore, once you're all set with the basics, you can now go ahead and jot down with the different segments of your organization. These segments can be based on demographics and psychographics that will help you differentiate the audiences from one another. It can be based on location or age, gender, or even behavior and types of organization. Once you have identified your segment, you can now invest on where would you want to put your most efforts in. Low being the places that would need your most time and efforts. Now that you are well set with the brand definition, target segments, their pain points of the segments, uh, channels preferred for the mode of communication, and finding the biggest gap, it's time to identify the right tactics for your stage of adoption cycle. This table will help you design a tactical plan for your segment. It covers all the stages of adoption cycle mapped to different channels and tactics that will help you design your communication. Now that you're through with this exercise, you have a more tactical plan for your segment that will help you understand this better. Uh, to give you an example, we have done this similar exercise with our previous client, Sarthi Education. Sarthi Education is a not for profit organization creating excellent learning outcomes for children in primary grades in India. They are situated in four parts of India, which is Delhi, Haryana, Uttarakhand, and Madhya Pradesh. And that's how they wanted to segment their audience. As I said before, segmentation can be based on anything that helps you differentiate your audience from one another, which is location. That's what Sarthi Education did. Their location, they divided their audience based on the location. You can do based on your the audience's age, gender, interest, or behavior, which is your demographics and psychographics. For Sarthi Education, they are based out of Delhi, and that's where they had the most strong advocacy and repeat donations coming from, and wanted to put their most marketing efforts on. Uh, that's why out of the four segments, which is Delhi, Haryana, Madhya Pradesh, and Uttarakhand, they wanted to focus on Delhi. They decided to focus on building awareness in Delhi and followed by lead generation in terms of adding new subscribers to website. The preferred channels for their marketing goals were Facebook and LinkedIn under social media. And for paid promotion, they use Google Ads. And under lead generation, they focused on Facebook for boost posts and Google Ads for remarketing the new visitors to their website, plugging in the pop-ups on website for better conversions of emails signups, and eventually leading to a better event sign up for their events and webinars. And lastly, we proposed the tactics for the primary channels, which is for Facebook, LinkedIn, Google Ads, and it depends totally on what are your primary channels, and thus the tactics would be derived. To come down to what tactics would be necessary for your social channels or different channels that you would go after. We have a resource for social media tactics and content. We will share this spreadsheet with you, which will help you in making a sound marketing plan. Moni or Anuja, if you can share that spreadsheet on the chat window, that would be helpful. So this spreadsheet consists of channel guide with different types of social channels, and that will give you a more detail on what channels to go after and why you should go after these social media channels. Then you have content types, which consists of three types of content: owned content, earned content, and paid content. So one, which is the brand content that you own, is called as the owned content. It can be your case studies, testimonials, blogs, etc. Then you have your earned content that derives from your partnerships. It can be on Facebook partnership, any social media partnership, or an offline partnership, and the content deriving from that. Paid content is, of course, the promotional content, that the boost posts that you do on Facebook or Instagram. We are also sharing okay. So we are also sharing this content guide that can give you ideas of creating various contents tying to your marketing goal. It will help you define different uh, or content depending on what story you are saying, what direction you are going with your marketing goals, and thus this spreadsheet could come in handy in such cases. And that's where sorry that's where it helps Sarthi education, particularly in terms of deriving different tactics for their audiences, in terms of what for the primary channels that they went after. um, I'm sure that this toolkit would have brought more actionable insights to Moni's theory of setting a brand foundation using brand attributes, looking at the sector landscape, targeting audiences, and building a strong narrative to your story. And surely this would have helped to connect the dots in a more actionable format. Um, I am sure that for the first glance of it, the session would have felt more intimidating. But slowly, once you will start building your brand story using these exercises in the toolkit, it would help you design a strong communication strategy for your organization. Additionally, we provide one-on-one sessions where we assist you in using the toolkit. If you want such services, we are happy to help. You can contact us at comscompass@foreststreetconsulting.com, and we will be pleased to assist you. Additionally, Moni and I are open to questions, so we can look at the questions that you have posted.
Thank you, Simran. So I think there were a couple of questions that had come earlier on. Maybe I'll just take through it. So there was one around, I think, a corporate and social marketing and how that would be different. That was the first question that kind of came up. Would you want to take it? Anuja, Simran, or Moni, one of you would want to take that question?
Sure, I'll take the question. Um, of course, there is a huge difference between corporate and social marketing. In terms of basis, in terms of the foundation, there isn't a difference, but in terms of the motivation or the last goal attached to this marketing, definitely there is a difference in terms of example, fundraising, advocacy, behavior change, etc. Instead of a purchase in case of corporates, the donor gets gratification of helping the beneficiaries. The beneficiaries are the recipients of the service, whereas consumers gets something in return in corporate setup. Because of this fundamental difference, the target audience is different, and so the way you talk to them will be different along with the channels.
So
I
basically, the
hope.
benefit that you're giving is very different. Usually, in a corporate sector, the kind of the benefit that I would be looking at is purely functional. Uh, I buy a soap, I buy a TV, I buy, things like that, which fulfill a almost like a physical need of mine. Now, when brands want to differentiate amongst themselves, they will add on an emotional layer and say, okay, maa ki haath ki chai, and those kind of things. But at the end of the day, it's a very physical, functional need that is being fulfilled by, say, a corporate brand. Whereas when we are talking about something in the social sector, we are talking about something which is much more deep, something which is going to touch somebody more. And ideally, we should look at somebody whom we can touch at a emotional level, because that is what we are trying to fulfill. Because here we're not talking about providing education to somebody, but that while that is fulfilling a need at the end consumer, so to speak, but you're also wanting to talk to somebody who will help you fund that journey, right? So the benefit that you're trying to give to me as an individual is more philanthropic, is more emotional. So that would be also one of the key differentiations between, say, a corporate and a social sector marketing.
Thank you, Simran and Moni. I'll move on to the next question. So the next question is on is branding possible at zero cost, right? So I believe here we are talking about a more organic kind of a branding on marketing that's happening. I think Mamta, you had raised this question. So is there something you want to add to it?
Yeah. So the cost that we talk about over here, I will assume that you're talking about literally paying for branding, because the other cost that you have to invest in building a brand is time and effort, right? Because if you want to go about it in an organic manner, it can be done, but it has to be done with some amount of an effort, with some kind of consistency, and someone who's focused and is driving that almost single-mindedly. Otherwise, what will happen is over a period of time, if your efforts are inconsistent, then whether you pay for it or you don't pay for it, inconsistent effort is, you might as well not do it, right? Whether you're paying money to put out an ad, but if you don't do it on a regular basis, after some time, or if the message becomes lost, or if you're doing it in an organic manner and I only contact you once in 6 months, you would have forgotten by the time I contact you the next time around. Yeah, because there are other people who are in the meantime contacting on a more regular basis, or being more relevant to you in that period of time. So it can be done organically. You don't need to post and spend money on doing paid media, so to speak. But whatever effort that goes in, it comes at a cost. That effort has to be consistent, that effort has to be diligent, and it has to be done with a single-minded focus.
Moni, moving to the next question.
Yeah.
So, one that's on the email marketing. So, the question is, if an organization does not have a strong database, should it, what would you suggest? Should they still be doing email marketing?
I'll take that question up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I think if you don't have an email database or a contact database, then there's no point of doing an email marketing, right? You need a good set of leads to do an email marketing. Before jumping on to email marketing, the better marketing tactic would be to get the users to your website, to increase the readership on your website, to see the conversions in terms of readership, how much time do they spend on their website, the traffic that is coming to your website, is it getting bounced off, is there any kind of issue with your website. Setting up the fundamentals on how you can generate these leads would be the first option that you should go ahead with, rather sticking to email marketing just because it's a channel of marketing.
Yeah, just to add to that, Simran, this is Anuja. I think the kind of one kind of tactic you can think of if you are looking for lead generation, meaning adding more names to your donor database. If that is your goal, then you have to look at online and offline possibilities, right? And if you're looking at the digital media for adding names, you can look at content. What is the content that can be useful for your target audience, wherein they would be willing to sign up for something or give you their names and contact information. In return of the content, it may be an interesting user story in the form of a video. It may even be a complimentary gift. It may be, something else. So what is it, what is your call to action, and what are you giving in return, and making it interesting and exciting for them to fill out that form, so that you get the capture that lead, capture that contact information on the website, would be something to think about.
I hope that answers your question. But if I request everyone, if there is any follow-up questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and kind of ask the question. Okay, I'll move on to the next
Okay,
question.
I have a question. I mean, it may not be a very direct question. And for example, I am speaking on behalf of Connecting Dreams Foundation. It is an organization who is working on a very different kind of work. I mean, we do not have a very straightforward product or a service or one kind of SDG that we work on. We work on creating change makers. So what is our belief system is that out of all 17 SDGs which are laid down today by United Nations, anything in all of them is achievable with a very simple process that we believe in is a change maker. So that is that in your own capacity that one can work, create a solution and give a sustainable solution to a community. So reason I have just mentioned this, I wanted to understand when you try to explain an organization, say for example I'm reaching out to an organization who has never come across to such kind of work, because organization corporates are more familiar with a very straightforward work. If somebody is working in domain of education, someone is working in domain of poverty or something which is very straightforward aligned, but not and in a way the way we work. So first challenge that we face is that we are not able to explain, or the familiarity is not there in the audience. That is number one. So we have to simplify it in a way that the audience understands. So my question to you is that what is a process, or what is a good few tips, which one can adopt while talking with people, organizations, standalone institutes, organizations who are probably looking for such work, but they globally or nationally, but are not able to relate. So how do you reach out to such places?
I'm
Do I
sorry,
make sense?
what was the last part? I understood the preamble of it. What was the last said? How do you reach out to such?
Yeah, I mean, how do you make a strategy, or what is your takeaway? I mean, your when you say that an organization If
So
you want to reach out to a new organization for that matter, I
right.
mean, what should be my understanding to be using these forums?
Right, right. So I think let's not jump to forums at first. Simran, if you can navigate back to that matrix where we have the segments and the stage of adoption cycle, maybe that's a good place for you guys to start on the kit. When you I think couple of things you have asked a very layered question. So I'm going to tease it apart in a few parts, right? So one question I think I would want to ask you is who is your target audience? Um, that is one kind of clarity you need to get.
Okay. So
I,
my target audience is for complete funding. Definitely, we do reach out to corporates. That's what how our funding comes from various programs that we do. We have a variety of programs that we do. We are into rural engagement programs. We have urban school programs. We have programs that we do with college students. Then it's a fellowship program also that we give out. We have programs based on inclusion vertical. So it is a variety of products under our catalog. It is not a very standalone product or a service that we
so
do.
my
So that
sorry
hmm,
to interrupt, but I think couple of things. One is I don't think my question was only about target audience. So if it's funding, then and I don't think I want to I want answers to those questions right now, considering there are other questions coming up in the chat window also. I'm going to give you pointers and then feel free to reach out to us separately. We are happy to, connect with you separately as well.
sure, sure.
So,
If you can also share this PDF file which you're showing on the
yeah, I have,
that would be helpful.
we have shared a link actually. I'll share it again.
Yeah, if you can do that. It's not showing on my screen.
So,
Thank you.
just to interrupt, sorry, my name is Nikita. We have got the file, but I cannot find the sample filled file because when we as a team we sit and strategize as to how to fill the strategy compass, we would need like a sample file to fill it along.
And by sample file, you mean what Simran showed on screen.
Yes, yes, Anuja.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
If you
Yeah,
could
we,
share this.
we I think we have your email addresses, so we can email that sample file to you post the webinar. I don't think
Okay,
that
okay.
should be a
Thank you
problem.
so much. Should we drop an email in the chat box?
No, we have you already filled out the form when you downloaded the kit, so we
Wonderful.
have those email addresses. That's not a problem. Um, so
Sorry to interrupt. So maybe we'll go back to the questions, finish, and then take up specific questions. The reason is that a lot of people already ask questions, so it'll be
yeah,
better
yeah,
if we
sounds
complete.
good. Yeah.
Um, okay, I can. Why don't you, Anuja, finish answering that question that came up? You were kind of going through the pointers, and then we can move on to the next
Yeah.
question.
So just to complete the pointers, I think there is some more clarity needed on defining the target audience personas, their pain points, and their contexts. So that is kind of one exercise I would go through. The second exercise I would go through is understanding what is the narrative, and in your narrative, who is the protagonist. When you say you want to help create change makers, uh, who is really benefiting by you creating these or helping build these change makers? Who is the protagonist? What is the protagonist challenge or pain point, or what is the drama in that narrative, and how are you overcoming it? I think that narrative needs to be clarified as well. Once you have a clear narrative and you understand your target audience's context, it's just a matter of connecting those two. So that's all I wanted to say, Minu. You can move on to other questions.
Sure. Okay. The next question was around how to develop a robust marketing plan in a shoestring budget. So, what I also understand is most of the organizations have the resource constraint issue. So, how to really look at creating a marketing plan with these constraints?
Um, I'll take this up. Uh, when you have a very shoestring budget, it would be advisable to narrow down your marketing efforts. Uh, as we went through this exercise, we also talked about, I'm sharing the screen, and we talked about finding the biggest gap in communication. If you see, if you, this process is to narrow down your marketing efforts, and thus finding the stage where you would want to put your efforts in. Once you decide that you want to focus on one of these stages, that would be the most in terms of ROI to your brand, you would want to stick to that, and then look at narrowing down the channels that you want to focus on. And most important part is that the channels that you go ahead with in terms of fulfilling the uh, stage that you want to target the segment on, it's important to look at the metrics for each of these channels, that whenever you do marketing on any of these, you want to track down the marketing efforts that you do on these channels, so that your efforts don't go wasted. Even on a low budget or no budget process, you can do marketing at a shoestring budget level.
So, Simran, do you want to scroll down and show them the two pages? So, this is, yeah, this is the resource that Simran was talking about, where we have mapped the stage of adoption cycle to various channels that are most relevant to that particular adoption cycle. So, for example, if the organization goal that you're looking at, or the biggest gap in your view, is the engagement with existing donor database, so as to increase repeat donations and to turn donors into advocates for your cause, then you're working on the bottom two rows. Because your primary goal is to work with existing donors, then the engagement can happen more direct in terms of email or phone calls, or even use inspired giving or in-person visits and so on and so forth. Then social media, I wouldn't put a lot of emphasis on social media in that case, because social media is a way broader medium that will help you reach newer audiences instead of the existing donors itself. So first you need to figure out where is your emphasis in this adoption cycle. Once you have figured out where the emphasis is, what stage you are focusing on, then you look at the channels, and as Simran mentioned, the metrics that you want to measure and the tactics you want to consider. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, if I can just add a bit to that, it's essentially about prioritizing what you need to do at that point in time, and where will you get the biggest bang for your buck, or effort for that matter. It really doesn't have to be, like money that you're spending, but it's the, again, as I keep saying, it's the effort that you're going to be putting into it. So you have to prioritize, and especially if you're on a shoestring budget, it becomes that much more critical that you do your homework and you identify which is what is the segment, and you go through this whole adoption cycle and define for yourself, where do I really need to pinpoint my efforts in.
Great. So I'll just move on to the next question. So this question says, at what time interval should a communication plan be revisited and revised?
Sure. Um, I think all your communication plan is tied up to your brand goals, your organization goals, what they are trying to achieve. In terms of, as we, approached this in our last question, that, for example, you are focusing on awareness stage. Once you have figured out that these are your social channels, this is giving you the right results, and you are generating awareness, right? Then you would want to move to the next stage of the process. And of course, depending on the stages that you have for your segments, you would change communication depending on what channel you are using. The goals would be same, but depending on what channel you are at and what stages of the adoption cycle, the communication plan would be changed. There won't be a fixed in terms of timeline that you would say that it would you should change, but in terms of awareness stage, when you want to attract new users, your uh, copy or your communication or your content would read very differently when it comes to the people who are already have engaged with you and already know about you. Once for to just to give you a simple example here, once a user is totally unknown, right? They have never visited your website or never seen your content. You would want to put out uh, your brand information, more of your brand level information, wherein you talk about your organization, your what your organization stands for, who is it, the foundational story, that the narrative that you talk about, that Moni explained, is what you would first focus on at the awareness stage. Once the user gets converted, they know about you, that what you do, what you uh, have, what you stand for as a brand. And next stage would be turning them into a lead for your organization. Is that when you would put out some kind of newsletter, some this has come up as a webinar or a newsletter, or some information about the engagements that you do on regular basis. And probably that kind of a content would be more attracted, because they would know now about you. Now they have moved on to what kind of work that you are currently doing, and that would help them, if that is the work that we want to help you out in, and would turn up as a lead for your organization. So depending on the different stages of adoption cycle, your communication would change on the channels and tactics that you are using.
Just to add on to that, actually, you should build your communication plan at a global level along with what your annual organization operation plan is. And there you should ideally identify what is it that you want to achieve through your communication strategy. Are you going to, like Simran was mentioning, what part of the adoption cycle are you going through? Are you going through the awareness stage? Are you going through the lead generation, engagements, and so on and so forth? Because each stage requires a minimum amount of time. Awareness is something where you really are not trying to get across a very deep brand message. You just want them to be aware of you as a brand, or top of mind recall of what is it that you do. Now that can happen at a much faster pace than, say, for example, if you're doing an engagement with them or conversion. So while you could have an overall brand communication plan as to what you will continuously say throughout the year, across what channel and at what frequency, you could also have a tactical communication plan where you're saying, okay, this is a program that I want to launch, for which I need to generate leads. Now, if this is a program which is going to run, say, for example, a 3-month program, so the lead generation activity will, say, for example, have to start from 2 weeks prior to that, and it's going to continue till, like for that entire 3 month plus the 2 weeks pre kind of a cycle, and then go back and see, and almost on a weekly basis track the kind of leads that you're getting out of it, and then if necessary modify the message that you're putting across. Maybe your targeting needs fine tuning. Sometimes, the keywords that you own, if you're doing social media, could need fine tuning and things like that. So that could need constant monitoring. So like Simran was mentioning, what is it that you want to achieve? Your communication plan and how often you need to go back and revisit and redo and relook at it is going to depend on that. But at an overall level, when you're building your annual organizational plan, that's why your annual communication plan also should be put into place.
Great. Thanks, Simran and Moni. So the next post is saying, is it a good strategy to share the same post across all the marketing channels?
I would want to point this question to the spreadsheet that I have shared. If you can see here on the screen that there are different types of channels, right? In terms of Instagram, then you have under Instagram, Instagram stories or Instagram reels, and then you have Facebook, and under Facebook you have Facebook Live, Facebook groups, Twitter, LinkedIn, and so on forth. You can see that each channel is tied with a different set of goal why that channel was introduced by Instagram or by Facebook, right? Why there was a reel made up, why wasn't just a video enough for users, right? There was a reel with a purpose, or there was a story as a tool that was for a purpose, and that purpose is what we have defined here, so that it helps you to choose what kind of a content do you want to put out, and what kind of goal that content would attach to, and how can you measure that content uh, on the different channels that you go after. So to answer your question, of course there is a difference when it comes to content, when you put out content on different channels.
Yeah, other than also the features of what each kind of content can do for you, you're also looking at your channel strategy and saying, why am I on Instagram and who am I targeting? So that message could be very different from, say, what you're saying on LinkedIn, which could be more, brand related or from a leadership perspective, whereas Instagram could more be story led as to what you're doing or an achievement and things like that. So yes, you can say similar things across the same channel if that's one campaign that you're running, but it is also possible for you to run different communications across different channels because the audience that you're talking to could be different. But despite saying that, you still need to maintain some form of consistency because your brand speak has to be consistent, right? So your brand colors, the way your logo is represented, the fonts that you use, the basic things like that are things that you need to be consistent across all channels. But the story that you tell and who you're talking to could depend on what you're saying.
Moving on to the next question. So, the question is on which platform is best for targeting youth?
So far, I think Instagram. Definitely, they are out of Facebook, in and out of Facebook, I would say, but more very much active on new channels, which is Instagram, Instagram Reels, Instagram Stories, then Snapchat as another one where users are more active on, the youth, as you said, are more active on. Also, even if you don't want to go after these social media channels, there is definitely a scope when it comes to writing content which attracts the youth of today. And if you could connect to back to the content grid, that would be more appropriate in terms of targeting the youth. In terms of Facebook also, right now we can't say that there are no youth uh, anymore on Facebook, right? They are there, but they are reading certain kind of content. And probably if you can tie your strategies to that kind of content which attracts the youth, probably you would come across in terms of the eyeballs that you would want to catch.
Also, there are some slightly, okay, of course, there's YouTube, but there are also some slightly niche kind of channels which are now coming up, things like Discord, right? Discord servers where you can actually have, it's almost like a private chat, right? And you could have a server, you could build a community online on Discord. You can have people from the community actually owning and running the content for you and things like that. So there are various such options which the youth are actually now looking at. And like Simon mentioned, Facebook is not something that they're looking at for consume certain kinds of stories, right? So you could, yeah, YouTube is one of them, Discord is another, Reddit threads are something else that you could possibly look at uh, using to drive content if you're really targeting youth.
Thank you. Thank you. So, the next question is it effective to buy databases for marketing purpose?
um, Sorry, I didn't get it. What kind of databases?
No, I think they're referring to email lists and databases that you could buy. Um, in desperate situations, people try these tactics, but in my experience, at least, and Moni, please add your thoughts to it. It has rarely been fruitful. First, a few reasons for that. One is it's very difficult to assess the quality of an email database that you are buying before buying it. So you don't know what is the quality level of the list that you're going to get. Second is email open and click rates on emails are as it is low, and so they could go even lower because you don't know whether the email list actually exactly matches your target audience or not. And so because of these variety of reasons, it's I normally we don't recommend.
Absolutely agree with Anuja. It's the databases that you get are often very flawed. Um, Sometimes you end up spamming people, which is more negative than good. And really, one should stay away from buying these databases.
Okay, great. So next is a very specific question on how do you get to know avenues where a product-based social enterprise can display their products?
That actually you will have to literally do a, a scan of what are the the events and any other forum which is happening in and around you, because there is unfortunately no database that is published where you can say, okay, I can participate in these 5 exhibitions and 4 seminars and that kind of a thing. So you literally have to do a scan every month, and uh, people do announce them well in advance. So if you really want to build a database of that kind of an event where you can go and pitch your product and things like that, you have to build your own calendar by doing a scan.
Moving on to the next one. So the question is, for funding purpose, should one create a specific page or use the same social media platform such as FB or LinkedIn where the brand's parent page posts are made, right? So that it does not get disturbed and there's a other page for funding. This is a question from Samriddhi. Samriddhi, if you want to elaborate on this, please feel free to speak up.
Yeah, so basically the idea is to not disturb the communications plan that is already set out in terms of posting and and going live with all the content that is already set out and not disturbing the calendar for that. But to create like a separate page so that the entity for fundraising remains intact. But I'm just concerned about how that would affect audience and if there's confusion that could get created here and if that actually a viable option.
Yeah, so for fundraising, um, I understand that you want to maintain whatever communication that you're doing at a more global level, which could be more awareness driven and things like that. But for fundraisers, you want to do a specific. There are options. You could on your website. The minute someone lands on your website, you could have an option which says um, you want to be a donor, so therefore you go into a separate kind of a link, and therefore the stories that are told to you, it has a slightly different context of how you're utilizing the money and things like that, whereas your main communication would be the impact that you're creating. But sometimes you really may not need to have a separate communication for fundraising, because the story that you're telling is the reason why the fundraiser is coming to you. And this is especially true, for example, for a retail donor, right? So what Cry is all about is not just about uh, fundraising. Could be going to a foundation or going to some other agency which will give them grants, but would also be looking at a retail donor who will want to sponsor a child's education or a meal, or things like that. So for the retail donor, you really should not be telling them a different story as such, because the reason why they are there is to see the impact. They want to see the smiling happy child. They want to see what is it that that money is going to do. But when you're talking about your large grants, or those, for those kind of people, you could definitely, and you will need a separate kind of communication for them, so the kind of tools that you have for them would be different. For example, it could be an annual report, right, which is something that you will only give to your fundraising donors who are of a large formats, the various foundations and the other grant organizations who you work with. So typically that's how you would make a differentiation between the two.
Thank you, that helps.
Nikita,
Great.
you have your hand raised. Do you have?
Thank you. I just had a question in sync with the similar question that she had for the page. So, the organization that I come from, we have a purpose of spreading spoken English everywhere. So, we came up with this idea that our current social page has picture obviously has pictures of our kids who are learning English and our courses and the programs that we are conducting across schools. Then we thought that how about we create a one-stop shop page where we are trying to teach English, like spoken English. Maybe it's through words, word of the day, maybe it's through short stories. So does it make sense that we should be creating this second page, or should we try to create all this content in our current social media calendar and have it on our current page which we have it? What would you suggest?
So there's really not a suggestion. It could be either, or you could run it as two separate campaigns, because one that you're talking about, which is a more generic kind of a thing where you're showing what is it that you're doing, and the other one that you're talking about, which is actually like almost like a kit, right, where
Yes,
people
yes.
can go, that could possibly be like a short-term campaign that you run, because the fact that you have a kit is good to know information for people at large, or even for donors or whatever, but it's not useful to me, right?
Right.
So yeah. So therefore you can run a shorter campaign telling me that we have this great kit and this is how we use it, kind of a thing. But if you're just going to tell me that you have a great kit without actually telling me what you're doing with it, or how it's being useful, and how many people you have impacted, how many children have learned basics, say from like whether they've just learned the alphabet stage or they moved on to grammar, or what, I don't know what stages that you're, how you'll define proficiency in the language. So for me, as a donor, as one of your target audiences, I would also want to know the impact that is happening, and that need not necessarily be. So what you're talking about is almost like a product driven communication that you're talking about. I don't want to know what, it's good to know that my air conditioner also filters out microbes and gives me healthier air, and uses copper tubing or whatever it is, kind of a thing. But at the end of the day, I want to know whether it cools it, what are the benefits that it gives me, right? It cools my
So
house,
just a
that kind
question.
of a thing. Yeah.
So just to interrupt, like, we had this conversation some time back that, when you are trying to connect to new donors, for example, maybe you could run some campaign, or maybe you could, so you think I can use this other channel page, which I am planning to, like, we are strategizing on making, like the English source, like the word of the day or phonetics or so on. You think we can use this as a source to connect to new donors and run campaign there, and then probably link them to our social work, where we are the other page where we are projecting our work with metrics?
Again, this is a very, very layered question, and really, for me to give you an off-the-cuff response to this would be very, very unjust, because without really, understanding where you're from, where you're coming from, who you're talking to, what is it that you want to achieve, what are the timelines that you want to achieve it in, I really don't think it will be fair to give you
Okay.
like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
knee-jerk response to
I
this.
think one other factor to consider, and I agree with Moni that to give you a point blank answer would be unfair, because it probably will be inaccurate, most likely. So the one factor to consider, and we have come across such situations with other clients as well, is whether you are diluting the parent brand by taking them elsewhere, or are you better off adding value to your parent brand by creating, let's say, a microsite. So this is a factor to consider. I can't have an opinion right now about your specific case, but that's something to consider.
Okay, okay. So, diluting the parent brand, creating I think we can, no, we'll get in
No,
touch. I'll
no,
email you.
yeah, meaning I'll simplify it for you. Basically, you have your brand's website, and now
Right.
you're creating this other kit or tools for them to ready tools for them to use. If
Hmm.
those people are spending time on the tools, then they how do they become aware of your larger work, and vice versa? People who are aware of your larger work, how do they become aware of the toolkit? Also, are the two personas the same? People who need to know about your work so that they can become a donor, are those the same people who need to know about toolkit? They might be completely different personas too. So I think understanding your
Okay.
target personas and then figuring out how the parent brand connects to this toolkit is important.
Okay. Thanks for the questions. We can, I've noted it down, and yeah, me with my team will sit and we'll strategize and work around these questions so we can come out with the solution. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
So we have
Welcome.
one more question. So maybe you want to just kind of bring that up as well on using the brand colors and fonts.
Yeah. So I'm doing currently a research, and I'm reading about how other brands are having their post, or what are the posts they are putting out on their social media, and what are the colors that they are using. So I just wanted to know, like, every post when you put out, maybe one post I'm telling a story of a person who my organization has impacted, or whose life I have changed. Okay, like my organization has changed, for example. So do I have to always use all the brand colors in it and use my logo in every post that I'm putting? What would you suggest? Or is it at times, like when you see just normal influencers, they just normally put posts. They don't have everything branding and everything. But as a foundation, do we have to go with colors and logo in every picture? What would you advise?
Um, I think, see, at times what happens is you are looking it at on a very daily basis. Your content, all of your content, you're looking at it on daily basis. And that's why you get uh, very agitated that on each post that you have to use the same kind of a tone, or same kind of a the content elements that you use to design your content. And thus it can be uh, difficult for you to look at every day. But in terms of your users, your not users, but people who don't generally are out there to specifically are looking for you, right? For example, on LinkedIn, when once you start scrolling, how often do you uh, stick to a brand, right? And see that when you read a content, you want to see, okay, which brand has written this content, or which
Right.
brand is talking about it. So for you it can be challenging, but as an user it's very important, because if you are putting the content out, what is the reason behind it? The main reason is so that your brand is known to them. If the
Right.
if the content is out, the information is passed, but they don't know who you are, then the last goal of your is blanked out. And that's why all these different elements that you use in designing your content is important. I don't suggest that you put all colors on all of the content, but there should be some kind of an element, or probably a small logo, or probably a small color line, or some element. A graphic designer would be more feasible to advise you on this, that how you can minimize but still keep the content in line with the brand.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so just to add on bit to this, see, Simran actually explained it beautifully. I'm even more of a Puritan, and to me, these are non-negotiables, right? Because when you look at yourself in the mirror, uh, you can change your hairstyle, you can put makeup, you can change your clothes, but your eyes will remain the same, your nose will remain the same, who you are as an individual will remain the same. So uh, you can use fonts as graphics to build it. So these are challenges which your creative team has to deal with, because the non-negotiables are the logo, and brand colors that does not have to be all of them, as Simran mentioned, right? You should have a brand palette. So it could be, you can define and say, okay, these are the set of colors, 3 or 4, or this is the spectrum that I want to use, and I will use any one of them at least in all my communication, so that at the end of the day, a blind person, not
Right,
like physically
right.
blind, but will know that this could. So when you look at a lot of campaigns, which, in the corporate world, which run teaser campaigns, even in teaser campaigns where there is no logo, the look, feel, the fonts they use, the colors they use, the imagery, the words are all in the same, in the whole come from the same brand story, so that when the logo is revealed to you, or the brand, or the story, the persona is revealed to you, you immediately form the connection, say, aha, I always knew this was this person.
Right. Right. Also, like my third question was like when we spoke about Discord. Discord is now on blockchain, and everyone is talking about it. So Discord could be a good medium for community building when I come to say about volunteer handling and all, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, is it much famous in the Indian market as of now? Also, is it carrying that kind of traction in our Indian market?
Kids are using it. I had given that example when someone asked what should I use, what channel
Okay.
to use to target the youth.
Mm.
Anyone above the age of 25 may or may not know about it, but anyone above the age of 10 to 25 for sure is on Discord.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Monish, for
You're
my
welcome.
questions. And even Meenu. Thank you.
The final question that we have received so far, so that's on cost marketing and how effectively to use cost marketing. This was a question from Gaurav. So, Gaurav, if you want to elaborate, please request you to unmute yourself and speak up.
Hope I'm audible.
Hello, Gaurav.
Yeah, am I audible? Hello.
You are audible. Yeah.
Hi everyone. Thank you for the session. It's very helpful. Um, I actually represent this dance-based organization called Dance Out of Poverty. We provide free of cost dance classes to children from underprivileged backgrounds, slums, JJ clusters, and we give them a platform to harness their skills and have fun while also learning important life skills. So we channelize their energy and we give them these sessions. My question regarding cause marketing is in this context only. Since we uh, deal with kids and since we deal with performing arts and dance, I wanted to understand how we can capitalize on cause marketing and associate with like-minded brands and how we can actually build a stronger foundation and get our messaging across while also receiving some important funds from the brands who can resonate with our cause. So for example, a shoes brand can resonate with our cause, or a speaker brand can resonate with our cause. So how can we capitalize on this need? Thank you.
So actually, cause marketing is one of the most difficult tasks. And not that anything else is that much easier, but essentially because at the end of the day, there is not really a tangible product or benefit that you can showcase when you're trying to do that kind of a thing. So for cause marketing, therefore, your narrative or your storytelling becomes that much more important, because you have to connect or at an emotional, if you can't give a a tangible benefit, you have to give an emotional one. So the connection has to be therefore at a much more layered and a much more deeper uh, level. So therefore, the effort that you need to do has to be that much more fine-tuned and that much more heartwarming, so to speak. So your narrative then becomes the most critical tool that you will have. And so the stories that you tell, where you tell them, how you tell them, then that becomes your the most important tool in your whole marketing gamut that you have, right? And you can talk about it again, like Simran's grid, which talks about you just want to create basic awareness. You could do it by, talking about, for example, let's take cry as an example, where we're talking about ensuring that happy childhood for every child, so to speak, right? So that is also cause marketing to that extent, where you have education, where you have nutrition, where you have health, various aspects of a cause of a child that you're trying to do. So here it could be sports, it could be music, it could be some kind of a fine art skill, or whatever it is that you're trying to do. So therefore, again, showcasing what is it that you're doing, how is it benefiting the child to be happier, more fulfilled, a better rounded personality. Those are the kind of stories that you will have to use to do cause marketing, and finding links with the corporate world who can help you fulfill those dreams. Because if you actually look at so when you're doing a sector analysis, at that time, maybe you should look at what are the stories that some of the sectors in the corporate world are also saying. So if Adidas is talking about fulfilling your sports dreams, then they should also be looking at fulfilling the sports dreams of every child, whether they can afford to buy the shoes, or whether you're looking at them giving you a consignment of shoes for, say, an underprivileged school, or another football team who's trying their best to learn the skills of the game and move on in life, right? Does that answer your question somewhat?
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So your sector analysis then becomes also critical as to who you define as other players in the sector.
Right.
Yeah, there are few more messages coming in. So I'll maybe take two more messages in the interest of time. So Mamta has a question that says, does adding words like foundation kind of add any weight to the branding overall, right? Like a non-profit name kind of, I think, ending with foundation. So is that beneficial to the overall branding?
I haven't seen any research which supports or does not support something like this. But the flip side to that is that if you add foundation, then automatically it is assumed you are funded, or in the sphere of non-profit kind of a thing. But even if you don't have it in your name, it just means that when you're introducing yourself, at that point in time, you just need to add that extra layer of messaging which says that you're a foundation. So I'll just give you an example of the erstwhile company that I used to work for, which was Social Alpha. Social Alpha is a technology business incubator, but Social Alpha is the brand name. The company name is FISE, Foundation for Innovation and Social Entrepreneurship, right? But that is not necessarily the FISE is not necessarily the name that is used by Social Alpha to add or take away from the story that they're trying to tell, or the goals that they're trying to meet. So it depends on who you're talking to. Sometimes when you're talking to, for example, government and things like that, so having foundation as part of your name could possibly be helpful. Uh, at other times, it could be irrelevant, really. It depends, again, the target audience. So therefore, who you're talking to will also define what you're saying to them. I hope that answers the question, Mamta.
Thanks, Mani. There is also one question from Nikesh which says, uh, if we already have a basis of content on social media sites like Facebook and Instagram for new audience, is it a good idea to post content there every day?
I'll take that up. I don't
Yeah.
think that it's necessary to post content out every day. It totally also depends that how you are testing your content, right? For example, in a month, how often or on what days is your audience active on that particular channel is important to know that do you want to post every day, or do you want to post 2 days or 3 days, or at what time of the day that you want to post. So this can differ from organization to organization, and thus it's important to uh, just test this thing out in terms of putting content at least for a regular every day for 2 months when you are starting off and you don't have the uh, data for it to know whether you should post 2 days or every day. Then you can test this out for two straight of 2 months and see what time of the day and what days is your audience active, and accordingly you can decide on the schedule of your post. I think that's all that we had in questions, right, Minu?
Yes, 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 Simran and Moni. So thank you so much for taking those questions up. I just had one final question from my end. So if you have to kind of talk about three key things that you would say is extremely important for us to have an effective marketing strategy as an organization, what would they be? Like, if you have to point out, these are the three non-negotiables that you need to have or do, right? Are there any recommendations there?
So if I go back to where we started off,
Mm-hmm.
is not three I would point to, but
Okay.
four key components for today's session. Uh, is to set your foundation up. You need the key brand attributes that would define who you are, who your organization is. Then talking about putting a sector landscape, uh, reviewing what similar organizations are doing, and uh, looking at the competitors. Then also detailing down on your audience and their segments. What are the different target segments? How do you want to market to these different segments, and at what stage are these different segments are of your audiences? Then accordingly you will design a narrative for these segments, which we talked about in the power of narrative. So for today's session, I think these four key components would be required to set up a strong foundation for your communication plan.
Great. Thank you so much, both of you, for taking us through the session. And thank you for everyone who attended the session today and actively participated.
Menu, sorry to interrupt. I actually lost out on the fourth non-negotiable. Could you please repeat on the fourth one?
So the fourth one is the power of narrative, where
Okay.
we talked about how you want to derive to the story, looking at the key brand attributes, your sector landscape, and the target audience. Depending on the three, you would define your narrative of your brand story.
Okay. Thank you, Simran. Thank you.
Thanks everyone once again. What we will do is also share with you a feedback link. It'll be great to have your feedback on this session, so that we can also improve what we are doing better for the next session. So, hope to see you all in the next session. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thanks, Minu.